Silver just hit triple digits, and it didn't tiptoe there. It smashed through the ceiling. As I'm recording this, it's January 26th, 2026, and spot is trading around $110 an ounce. Now here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. At 150, is your silver still yours? Not, can you hold it? Not, can you store it? I mean something more uncomfortable. Can you still buy it? Can you still move it? Can you still sell it to anyone you choose? Because there's a line where silver stops being treated like a precious metal hobby and starts being treated like a strategic input to national infrastructure. And when that line gets crossed, the rules can change fast without anyone kicking your door in. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through the quiet legal roadmap that can turn a private metal into a controlled material using tools that already exist inside the system. No politics, no parties, no personalities, just the mechanics. And I want you to do one small thing before we begin. Comment the country you're watching from. Not your address, just your country. I want to see how global this audience really is, because these supply chains don't stop at borders. Also, quick note, the stats show a huge chunk of people watching aren't subscribed. If this kind of real-world breakdown helps you think clearer, hit subscribe. When markets go vertical, bad information multiplies. All right, 3 things, fast and clean. First, why this move to 110 is different from the old silver spikes. Second, why critical mineral status changes the risk profile overnight. Third, the 4 policy levers that could lock up the silver pipeline at 150 without a single confiscation headline. Before we go into laws, we need one foundation, what yours actually means. Most people think ownership is one layer. It's in my hand, therefore it's mine. But in a stressed market, ownership has 4 layers. Layer 1, possession, you physically have it. Layer 2, legal title, you can prove you acquired it lawfully. Layer 3, market access, you have a functioning, permitted pathway to buy and sell. Layer 4, conversion. You can turn it into purchasing power on terms that don't destroy your gains. At $25, people only worry about Layer 1. At $150, Layer 3 and Layer 4 become the battleground. So this video is not about fear, it's about friction. How rules, bottlenecks, and temporary measures can quietly squeeze your options without touching your safe. Now, the new reality. We are now in the 6th straight year of a global silver deficit. That's not a slogan. It's the simple gap between what the world can produce and what the world is demanding year after year, with inventories acting like a battery that keeps getting drained. And this year, something important happened. Silver was placed on the U.S. Geological Survey's critical minerals list. That phrase sounds boring. It's not boring. It's a label that changes how agencies talk about a material. It's the difference between investors like it and industry needs it. When a material is critical, it shows up in national planning documents. It becomes eligible for accelerated programs, stockpiling conversations, supply chain mapping, and procurement priorities. It attracts attention from the parts of the system that don't care about charts. Now add the trigger that put gasoline on the shortage, export licensing. As of January 1st, China tightened export licenses for silver. The practical effect is simple: fewer doors, more paperwork, and more domestic prioritization. When a major refining and supply hub restricts outbound flows, the rest of the world feels it like a pressure drop. So when you hear silver at $110, don't only think price. Think factories, think mints, think refineries, think delivery windows stretching from days into weeks. Because the real battlefield is not the ticker. The battlefield is the pipeline. And at $150, that pipeline becomes tempting to control. Let's map the pipeline in plain language, because this is where the power lives. Silver doesn't teleport from a mine into your hand. It moves through choke points, mine output, concentrate, refiner, wholesale bar, fabricator or mint, retail dealer, you. If you control the refiner, you control the bar. If you control mint blanks, you control the coin. If you control wholesale logistics, you control the retail shelf. And that is why modern control rarely looks like confiscation. Modern control is cleaner. It's paperwork. It's allocation. It's restrictions at the choke points. The system doesn't need to chase millions of households. It just needs to control a few dozen industrial gates. So when someone says they could never take it, remember this: they don't have to take it. They can make it hard to replace, hard to move, hard to sell, hard to convert. That's what control looks like in 2026. Now we get to the 4 levers, and I need you to listen closely, because the danger is not one lever, it's how they stack. Lever 1, the Defense Production Act. The Defense Production Act is not a rumor. It's a law that allows the government to prioritize and allocate materials for national defense needs. In plain English, it lets authorities tell industries, this order goes first. And that sounds reasonable, until the definition of national defense expands beyond tanks and missiles into grids, satellites, communications, drones, power electronics, and energy systems. Here's the modern version of confiscation. They don't have to seize your coins. They can declare refined silver a strategic and critical material, then direct domestic refining and minting capacity toward priority orders. Imagine a simple scenario. Silver hits $150, headlines scream, shortage. A large program needs silver for high-reliability electronics and energy infrastructure components. Under a priorities and allocations framework, rated orders can jump the line. What does that do in real life? Refiners can be told to fill certain contracts first, fabricators can be told to allocate output to certain customers first, mints can be told to focus on certain outputs first, and at the end of that chain, the retail market becomes whatever is left. That's the key phrase, whatever is left. Your silver is still in your safe, but the market you used to rely on becomes a controlled doorway. You don't hear a siren. You hear a dealer say, nothing available, or available but limited, or available but the premium is insane. That's not drama. That's what allocation means. Let's make it even more concrete with a 7-day story. Day 1, an agency issues new guidance, and big manufacturers start calling their suppliers. Day 2, suppliers switch to contract first delivery and stop quoting spot-based retail. Day 3, wholesalers pull listings, then relist at call for price. Day 4, mints pause certain products because blanks are diverted. Day 5, dealers cap purchases, then cap buybacks because they don't want inventory risk. Day 6, shipping rules tighten for large orders and payments get scrutinized. Day 7, the public finally notices because shelves look empty even while the chart is screaming. That's how a market turns from buy anytime into buy if permitted. Again, no door kicking required. The lever isn't your house. The lever is the supply chain. Lever 2, emergency powers tied to energy. Executive Order 14156 declared a national energy emergency, and it has been extended. Emergencies are legal multipliers. They expand what can be justified as temporary action to protect infrastructure, supply continuity, and system stability. Now listen carefully. I'm not saying an order automatically targets your personal stack. I'm saying classification creates options. If silver is treated as critical to energy infrastructure because it's a key conductor in solar, electrification, and grid components, then emergency frameworks can justify controls around movement, stockpiling, or supply chain prioritization. And again, you don't need seizures to change reality. All it takes is tighter reporting at large transactions, restrictions on commercial stockpiles, export controls on refined forms, directives that redirect domestic production, or rules that label certain behaviors as disruptive. The average person doesn't notice the law changed until the day their dealer says, we can't ship that to your region, or we can't accept that payment method, or we can't buy that quantity today. Control arrives as friction. Lever 3, the soft seizure, tax. This is the lever that feels invisible until it bites. If you bought silver at $25 and it trades at $150, you're sitting on a massive nominal gain. In stressful environments, governments have historically used taxes to capture sudden profits. Sometimes it's called a windfall tax. Sometimes it's called a surcharge. Sometimes it's framed as a fairness mechanism during an emergency. Here's why it matters. A tax lever doesn't need enforcement teams. It needs reporting, withholding, and penalties. And it often targets the moment of realization, the sale, because that's where the system can measure it, document it, and enforce it. So the risk isn't only do you own silver. The risk is, can you convert it into purchasing power without losing most of the upside? If policymakers ever decide that rapid, large gains in strategic materials are excess, the exit can become expensive. That is why, at $150, planning beats dreaming. Lever 4, legislation and compliance machinery. There is a bill titled the Silver Shield Act of 2025, listed as H.R. 4502. Despite the name, it is not about silver bullion. It focuses on operational end-use monitoring for defense-related exports and transfers. Why bring it up? Because it shows how quickly monitoring programs and compliance frameworks can be built when lawmakers decide something needs oversight. And once a material is framed as defense relevant, because it sits inside drones, satellites, guidance systems, communications, and hardened electronics, then it becomes easier to justify new reporting, tracking, and restrictions at the industrial level. Again, not raids, rules. The system's favorite move is to regulate the gate, not chase the crowd. Now let's address the biggest mental trap. People hear laws, and they jump to one extreme. Extreme 1, nothing will happen, it's impossible. Extreme 2, everything will happen tomorrow, it's guaranteed. Both extremes are lazy. The adult way to think is this. These are tools. Tools can be used lightly or heavily. Tools can be used temporarily or extended. Tools can be used in narrow lanes or expanded. Your job is not to predict the exact day a tool gets used. Your job is to build a plan that doesn't collapse if a tool gets used. That is what resilience looks like. Now, let me widen the lens for 1 minute because it matters to your decision making. There are two silver worlds stacked on top of each other. World 1 is the paper world. Futures, options, leverage, fast money. It's loud, liquid, and violent. It can swing price like a wrecking ball. World 2 is the physical world. Refineries, blanks, bars, industrial contracts, vault stocks, delivery windows. It's slower, but it's the world that powers reality. When the physical world tightens, the paper world eventually gets dragged toward it through premiums, delays, and scarcity. If you want to understand whether your silver is still yours, stop staring only at spot and start watching friction. Friction is the truth leaking into reality. Here are the friction signals I watch, and I recommend you watch them too. 1. Persistent premiums that don't relax even when price dips. 2. Longer delivery times for wholesale bars and mint blanks. 3. Sudden changes in dealer buyback policies. 4. Quantity limits and call for price behavior. 5. Shipping restrictions or payment restrictions. 6. New language from agencies about allocation, prioritization, emergency supply, or stockpiling. 7. Industrial buyers complaining publicly about procurement difficulty. 8. Any announcement that a strategic stockpile is being expanded. When multiple friction signals light up at the same time, that's when $150 stops being a number and becomes a policy problem. Now, a quick but critical detour: paper silver versus physical silver. If your exposure is a ticker, an ETF share, a pooled account, an unallocated program, a futures position, your relationship to silver is not the same as holding metal. That does not automatically make paper bad. It just means the risk set is different. With paper exposure, you add layers: counterparty risk, someone must perform; policy risk, rules can change; settlement risk, cash can replace delivery; and liquidity risk, the bid can vanish when you need it. With paper exposure, you add layers: counterparty risk, someone must perform; policy risk, rules can change; settlement risk, cash can replace delivery; and liquidity risk, the bid can vanish when you need it. With paper exposure, you add layers: counterparty risk, someone must perform; policy risk, rules can change; settlement risk, cash can replace delivery; and liquidity risk, the bid can vanish when you need it. If you hold a product that promises silver exposure, read the fine print like it's a parachute manual. Ask 2 questions. 1. Does it represent a claim on specific bars or a general claim on a pool? 2. Under stress, is physical delivery possible, or is cash settlement the default? Again, no panic, just clarity, because when scarcity hits, the system always protects the pipes first, and paper lives in the pipes, physical lives outside the pipes. Now, why is silver a uniquely sensitive material compared to gold? Gold is primarily monetary. It's hoarded. It's rarely consumed. Silver is different. Silver is both monetary and industrial. It gets burned into products. It gets dispersed. It gets used up. It sits inside solar cells, power electronics, advanced computing, high reliability connectors, and components that can't tolerate failure. And that creates a strange reality. If silver is needed for industrial continuity, the system has an incentive to prevent retail hoarding from draining supply. Not because anyone hates you, because industries have contracts, production deadlines, and national infrastructure targets. This is exactly why critical mineral designation matters. It signals that silver is no longer treated like a decorative commodity. It's treated like a necessary input. At $150, the gap between investment metal and infrastructure metal becomes too big to ignore. And that is when policy levers stop being theoretical. Let's strengthen this with the numbers you should anchor in your head. As of January 26, 2026, silver is trading around $110 1 mar, up over 7% in a single day. That kind of move is not a gentle bull market, that's a scramble. Now add the supply pinch. Export licensing tightened at the start of 2026, narrowing the list of firms allowed to ship refined silver outward. The effect is not only less volume, it's slower flow, delays, documentation, prioritization. And because silver's supply is tied to other metals, the price signal doesn't flip a switch on mine output. You can't magically produce more silver on demand. Most of the world's silver arrives as a byproduct of mining for other metals. So when demand spikes, the immediate response is not more supply. The immediate response is higher premium. Premium is the market admitting scarcity. That is why the paper price can look calm while the physical market feels tight. The truth shows up first in availability, not in headlines. Now, I want to give you a visual model for how control without seizure works. Picture a river. At the top of the river are mines, that's upstream. In the middle are refiners and fabricators, that's midstream. At the bottom are dealers and you, that's downstream. If someone wants to control the river, they don't chase every glass of water in every kitchen. They build a gate in the midstream. That's the refinery. That's the blank supplier. That's the logistics hub. So if you ever hear the phrase, "they would never confiscate," Translate it into the real question: would they ever prioritize or restrict midstream flow? History says yes. When an input becomes strategic, midstream always gets attention. And silver is the rare metal that can become strategic from two angles at once: money and electricity. That combination is why it's volatile and why the control toolkit exists. One more thing, and this is where a lot of people get tricked. The words temporary and emergency are soothing. They sound like a short bridge you can walk across. But in systems, temporary measures have a habit of becoming semi-permanent because once a control framework exists, it's easy to extend. So if you want to stay calm and effective, do this. Treat every new control as a new baseline until proven otherwise. Treat every new restriction as a test balloon. Treat every new reporting rule as a signal that attention has shifted. You don't need to fear it. You just need to not be surprised by it. Now let's translate each lever into what you would actually see on the ground. If the Defense Production Act style prioritization ramps up, the public signal is not a press conference. It's a supply change. Wholesalers stop quoting firm prices. Product lines get temporarily paused. Certain bar sizes vanish first. And large industrial buyers get contracted allocations, while retail gets leftovers. If emergency energy powers start touching the silver pipeline, the signal is not the word silver. It's the word infrastructure. Silver gets bundled into broader categories like grid reliability, renewable components, and critical conductors. And once it's bundled, restrictions can be written without ever naming bullion. If the tax lever shows up, it often starts as only for large gains or only for extraordinary profits. Then it spreads. And that's why a pre-written plan matters. If you wait until after a change, you are negotiating from a corner. And if new legislation expands monitoring and compliance, the signal is paperwork growth. More forms, more verification, slower transactions, higher friction. That friction alone can change behavior, because friction is cost. So here is the calm takeaway. At 150, your biggest risk is not a movie scene. Your biggest risk is a slower, narrower set of choices. And the moment choices narrow, the crowd panics. Not because they lost ownership, but because they lost optionality. Optionality is what people pay for in a crisis. And optionality is what rules quietly remove first. Now, before you buy another ounce, run this 3-question protocol. Question 1. Am I buying because the price is rising, or because my plan requires it? Chasing price is how people overpay and then get shaken out on the first violent dip. Question 2. Do I understand my liquidity needs for the next 6 months? If you might need cash, don't trap yourself. A forced sale is a silent tax. Question 3. Do I know my exit routes? Not just one dealer, not just one method, not one assumption. Multiple legitimate routes so a single rule change doesn't trap you. And a quick warning, because every bull market attracts predators. When scarcity stories go viral, scams explode. Fake allocated programs, fake vault claims, fake pre-orders, sketchy buyback promises. If a deal sounds too good at $150, it's probably someone trying to sell you air. Stay boring, stay verified, stay disciplined, because in the end, this isn't about winning an argument online, it's about protecting your purchasing power in the real world. To be fair, these risks don't have to materialize. If supply loosens, if premiums collapse, if industrial demand cools, and if the critical attention fades, then the control toolkit stays on the shelf. But you don't build your safety plan on hopefully. You build it on what is possible, what is legal, and what is incentivized when a shortage turns into an emergency. So hold your mettle like an adult, hold your plan like a professional, and hold your emotions like a stoic, because the market can swing, but the rules can swing too. One last reminder, the goal is not to fear the system. The goal is to see the incentives early so you can choose calmly while others react. Stay sharp. Now, I'm going to separate fear from planning. Fear says, they're coming for everything. Planning says, what are the choke points and what choices do I still control? So here are practical, non-dramatic steps that reduce vulnerability without doing anything shady. Step 1. Know what you own, not just silver. What form? Coins, rounds, bars, older coinage, large bars? Different forms move through different channels, and different channels become restricted differently. Industrial users don't need your collectible coin. They need refined input. That matters. Step 2. Document cleanly. Keep purchase records. Keep receipts. Keep a simple inventory list. Not because you love paperwork, but because in a tightening environment, clean documentation makes legitimate transactions smoother. Step 3. Avoid forced selling. Most people don't lose in metals because they were wrong about the long-term story. They lose because life forces a sale at the worst moment. Don't lock up rent money. Don't use leverage. Don't build a position that collapses if silver takes a punch. Because remember, even in a bull market, silver can drop hard during a liquidity event. If you're forced to sell into that punch, you donate your upside. Step 4, diversify access, not just storage. One location, one dealer, one pipeline, one rule set. That's fragile. I'm not telling you to break rules or hide assets. I'm telling you to think like a risk manager. Avoid single points of failure. Step 5, define success now. If your plan is I'll sell at a number, that's not a plan. A plan is I will convert a portion under these conditions and I will keep a portion as long-term insurance. That way, if a rule change hits, you're not scrambling. You already decided what matters. Now, let's talk about the story people tell themselves at $150. They imagine a clean cinematic moment where they walk into a dealer, sell, and walk out with a smile. But stressed markets don't work like movies. Under stress, spreads widen. Under stress, rules shift. Under stress, activity gets pushed into controlled channels. That's why the soft seizure concept matters, because the easiest way to control a thing is not to seize it. It's to make the exit expensive. Now let me give you the most important sentence in this entire video. Price changes behavior. Classification changes permission. At $25, silver is an investment. At $150, silver is a supply chain problem. And when something becomes a supply chain problem, the system doesn't ask politely. It rearranges incentives and access. B-roll, split screen, 1933 gold surrender notice, modern policy document. Back then, control was blunt and visible. Today, control tends to be procedural. Back then, a big headline. Today, a quiet memo. A new form, a new restriction on a supplier. The world got more complex. Control got more surgical. Now I want to close with a cliffhanger and a checklist. Cliffhanger first. The next phase of this silver story won't be decided by a candle on a chart. It will be decided by a sentence in a policy document that most people will not read. A definition, a designation, a temporary measure, a priority allocation. That's how big moves get locked in. Now the checklist, what to watch in 2026. Watch for language about rated orders and allocation. Watch for any expansion of strategic stockpile programs. Watch for sudden temporary changes to reporting thresholds. Watch for restrictions on refiners, blanks, and industrial supply chains. Watch for tax proposals that target extraordinary gains. And watch physical market friction, because friction shows up before headlines. There are 3 routes from here, and you should be ready for all of them. Route 1, the grind up. Higher highs, ugly dips, then higher again, with premiums staying stubborn. Route 2, the stall. Price goes quiet, boredom shakes out the crowd, and the shortage keeps building. Route 3, the punch in the mouth. A broader liquidity event forces selling, and silver drops fast even if the long-term setup stays intact. If you only prepare for Route 1, Route 3 will break you. So build your plan for the ugly route, not the easy route. At $150, the question isn't how high can silver go. The question is who gets delivery and who gets a headline. Drop your country in the comments, tell me whether you hold physical or paper exposure, and I'll see you in the next one. This content is for educational purposes only. It is not legal, tax, or financial advice. Consult qualified professionals for decisions that affect your situation.